Welcome to the deep dive, where we take all your sources and kind of pull out like the most important pieces.
Yeah.
And today we are going to do a deep dive into personality-based job analysis,
Okay, PBJA.
PBJA, and we're going to be looking at bias in this process.
That's fascinating.
Yeah,
Especially now with the nature of work changing so rapidly.
absolutely. So PBJA, in a nutshell, it's all about figuring out which personality traits are truly crucial for a job.
Right.
We've got a study here from the journal Personnel Psychology,
Okay.
and this is by Guinness, Mazurkiewicz, and Hegstad.
Got it.
They use this tool called the Personality-Related Personnel Requirements Form, or PPRF, to connect personality traits to job requirements.
And this is where it gets really interesting, I think. The study highlights some significant benefits of using personality-based job analysis, particularly for jobs that are becoming more and more common.
Okay.
So think customer service roles, healthcare management positions that require really strong interpersonal skills and emotional intelligence.
Okay, so PBJA can help us understand what personality traits actually matter for those types of roles.
Right.
But the study also uncovers this downside,
Yeah.
which is bias.
Yes. And oftentimes this is overlooked. The researchers identified several cognitive biases that can sneak into the PBJA process. For example, self-serving bias, where we tend to overemphasize the traits that we possess when we analyze a job, assuming that those are the keys to success.
Well, so if I'm like a super organized person,
yeah.
I might just assume that being organized is like essential for a job, even if it's not actually that important.
Exactly. And then there are implicit trait policies, unconscious beliefs that we hold about what traits lead to good performance. And these beliefs are often influenced by our own personality.
Our own biases can actually like change how we view a job and the traits needed to be successful.
Yeah.
That's a little unsettling.
It is a bit unsettling.
Right.
And to add another layer, there's social projection and the false consensus effect. And this is where we project our own characteristics onto others, assuming that they are more like us than they actually are.
So if I'm like an extrovert, I might assume that everybody else is kind of an extrovert.
Exactly.
And so being outgoing is like essential for this job.
Precisely. All of these biases can significantly skew the results of a job analysis, leading to inaccurate and potentially unfair hiring practices.
So what can we do about it?
Well,
They didn't just leave us hanging with all this bias, did they?
thankfully, no. They tested a potential solution, web-based frame of reference training, or F4 training.
Okay.
This type of training helps to establish a shared framework for understanding the job and the traits that are involved. Participants get clear definitions of each personality trait. They see real-world examples. They practice making ratings and receive feedback on their accuracy.
So you're like calibrating everybody to kind of be on the same page?
Yeah, think of it like that.
I like that analogy.
Hmm.
But did it actually show that F4R training worked?
Yes. The results were compelling. F4R training significantly weakened the link between a worker's own personality and the traits that they rated as important for a job.
So they were able to kind of step outside themselves. But how did they measure this?
Well, they looked at the probability that someone would give a higher importance rating to a particular trait if they hadn't received the FOR training.
Okay.
And the numbers were surprisingly high.
Like what kind of numbers are we talking here? I need the details.
Well, for administrative support assistants, there was a 62% chance that they would overrate the importance of a trait compared to someone who had the training.
Wow.
And for supervisors, it was even higher, 68%.
That's wild. So it seems like F4R training could be this like powerful tool for reducing bias, but this was in a specific job type.
Right.
Administrative assistants and supervisors in city government. Do you think these findings can apply to other industries and other roles?
That's a great question, and one we'll explore further in part 2 of this deep dive.
Okay.
So,
Stay tuned.
yeah, welcome back to the deep dive.
Where we're still kind of exploring this world of personality-based job analysis.
Yes.
And trying to figure out how to keep all this bias out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you raise a really great question at the end of part 1.
Okay.
Can these findings about FOR training be applied to other industries and roles?
Right. Because this study focused on, administrative and supervisory roles in city government.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder if the results would be different in, say, like a fast-paced tech startup
Yeah.
or like a creative advertising agency.
It's a valid question, And while more research is definitely needed, there's reason to believe that the principles behind FOR training could be widely applicable.
Okay.
Cognitive biases
Yeah.
aren't limited to certain industries or
Yeah.
personalities.
We all have them.
Exactly. We all have them regardless of where we work or what we do.
That's true. So even if like the specific traits that are emphasized might vary from job to job,
Uh-huh.
the underlying problem of bias is something we all have to be aware of.
Absolutely. That's why F4 training focuses on building that shared understanding and a common language
Okay.
around these personality traits. So by giving everybody the same information and the same tools for evaluation, it helps to level the playing field and reduce the influence of those individual biases.
It's like creating this set of objective standards
Yeah,
instead of relying on just like subjective interpretations.
exactly.
But even with all this training,
Yeah.
the study found that there was still this link
Yeah.
between a person's own personality and how they analyze a job.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
It's a fascinating question. It gets to the heart of what it means to be human.
Okay.
We are, by nature, subjective beings. Our experiences, our values, our perspectives, all of that shapes how we see the world. And trying to completely erase that subjectivity
Mhm.
is probably an impossible task.
So if we can never fully escape our own biases,
Mm-hmm.
does that mean that PBJA is like flawed? Should we just abandon the whole idea?
Not necessarily. I think the key here is to acknowledge the limitations and to use PBJA as a tool, not a definitive answer.
Yeah.
It can provide valuable insights, but it shouldn't be the sole basis for making these hiring decisions.
So it's all about like using it responsibly
Ex-
and ethically.
Yeah. And that means being transparent with those candidates about how personality data is being used and ensuring that those assessments are fair, valid, and relevant to that specific job.
Okay. So we need to be mindful, but we don't want to just get rid of it completely.
Right.
PJA can still be useful if it's used carefully.
Precisely.
Uh-huh.
And I think this research on FRR training shows us we can take concrete steps to minimize bias and make PBJA more objective.
Uh-huh.
But it also highlights the need for this ongoing research
Yeah.
and critical thinking.
So what are some of the big questions that we still need to answer? What are like the next steps in research?
Well, one area that I find particularly intriguing is the idea of applying a version of F4 training to the candidates themselves.
You mean instead of just training the people analyzing the jobs,
Yes.
we train the people taking the personality assessments?
Exactly. What if we gave candidates this basic understanding of how these tests work, what they're measuring, and how to interpret those results?
Welcome back to the deep dive.
Where we are finishing up our exploration of personality-based job analysis.
Yeah, and in part 2, we were discussing this really interesting idea of what if we provided some sort of training to the people taking the assessments?
It's an interesting concept, isn't it? Most people taking these tests have very little understanding of how they work, what they're actually measuring, or how their answers might be interpreted. It's like walking into a game and you don't know the rules.
I can definitely relate to that. Like I remember taking personality tests for jobs and just being like, what are they looking for?
Yeah.
Is there a right or wrong answer?
Exactly. And that lack of understanding can lead to problems. People might try to game the test, or their anxiety might influence how they respond, making the results less accurate. But what if we could empower those candidates
Yeah.
by giving them a better understanding of the whole process?
So instead of it being like this scary test, it's more of like an opportunity to understand yourself.
Exactly. Imagine if candidates were given a basic understanding of personality traits, how those assessments work, and what they're designed to measure. This could help them to provide more honest and authentic responses, leading to more accurate results.
Right. And wouldn't it also make the whole experience less stressful
Yeah.
for job seekers? Because if they kind of knew what to expect and understood the purpose, they might just feel more confident.
It's certainly a possibility. And this training could go beyond just the mechanics of the test. What if we help candidates understand their own personality profiles, their strengths and weaknesses, and how those traits might actually align with certain job roles?
That's a really interesting idea because then they would be able to make better decisions about their career.
Exactly.
And they could even use the test results as a starting point to kind of work on themselves.
Precisely. It shifts the focus from passing this test to actually gaining some valuable insights about yourself. And this could potentially lead to a more positive candidate experience overall. Instead of feeling judged or rejected based on a test score, they might feel like they've learned something valuable about themselves regardless of the outcome.
It sounds like a win-win, but I imagine there are some challenges with implementing this kind of training.
Sure.
Like how do we ensure that everyone has access to it,
Right.
and then how do we also make sure that the training itself is unbiased?
Those are great questions. And they highlight the need for really careful research and development. We need to figure out the best ways to deliver this kind of training, how to measure its effectiveness, and how to make sure that it's fair for all candidates.
It sounds like there's still a lot of work to be done in this field.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, like, what will the future of hiring look like as we start to understand more about this?
It's definitely an area that's ripe for innovation. As technology advances and our understanding of human behavior deepens, we can expect to see even more sophisticated tools and approaches for assessing and matching people with jobs.
Okay.
But no matter how advanced the technology becomes, I think the human element is always going to be crucial.
Yeah.
We need to remember that behind all of the data, all of the scores, every personality profile, there's a real person
Right.
with a unique set of skills, experiences, and aspirations.
That's a really great point to end on.
Yeah.
We can't lose sight of the human side of all of this.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of personality-based job analysis, I think a key takeaway is that personality matters, but we need to approach it thoughtfully, ethically, and with a good understanding of ourselves.
Couldn't agree more.
And until next time, keep diving deep.